Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. It's the home to so many amazing shows, from Nerd Nuptial on a Sunday, on a Monday, all the way through to Missing Frames, which is on a Sunday. I'm Lee Hutchison, one of your co-hosts for our 9th issue of Prelude to Infinity War, and I'm joined for the first time by my colleague on Filibuster, Dallas King. How are you today, Dallas?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm so glad that we managed to get you on for this episode at long last.
I've just sneaked in just before.
Exactly, you got into the last possible issue. Me and you will be back again next week to discuss Infinity War. We're actually going to be doing 2 episodes for that. Me and Dallas are going to be up on the Monday talking about it. We'll be discussing it in the heart of Edinburgh, which will be the home of the Infinity War movie for 10-15 minutes. And then there'll be an episode on the Wednesday with Matt, Sean and Daniel discussing the movie as well. So there'll be plenty of Infinity War coverage then. But this episode drops on the Wednesday, so if you're in the UK, you'll be excited you can finally go see the movie tonight. If you're in America, it's something to kill the time till it comes out tomorrow. And in this episode, we'll be discussing possibly 2 of the most popular Marvel movies in a certain way, Thor 3, Ragnarok, and Black Panther. So Dallas, I'm really excited that we managed to get a Taika Waititi fan on, and someone that you've teased that you have opinions on Black Panther, so it sounds like you're the perfect match for this issue.
Well, I certainly hope so, and I hope my opinions match the expectations on me.
So I'm curious, I don't know if you want to take away, give people a wee brief plot synopsis of Thor Ragnarok?
Okay, yeah, no, well, Thor Ragnarok sort of picks up where Thor kind of left off at the end of Age of Ultron, where he's off scouring the galaxy to sort of get more information on these Infinity Stones and also preventing Ragnarok. And when we meet him, he's chained up in a Surtur's cave. Surtur, being voiced by Clancy Brown, is a sort of giant fire demon who claims that he will cause the end of Asgard, and it starts off with a fight that Thor wins quite easily and then returns to Asgard with the trophy of Surtur's skull, where he finds things are not as he left them, where Odin is enjoying a play based on the heroic life of Loki, and discovers that his father is not exactly who he seems. I think that would be fair to say, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. So, kind of going into kind of Thor 3, I don't know if people have been reading your reviews of the Marvel movies on your webpage, but what was your thoughts of Thor 2 first and foremost?
For me, Thor: The Dark World is probably the worst Marvel Cinematic Universe film for me. I mean, in terms of summer blockbusters and stuff, it's not a terrible film. It's just when you compare it to the rest of the other sort of 16 films which are already sort of out there, it just doesn't really hold up that well. And I think looking back on it recently, the main problem is the villain, Malekith, the Dark Elf. Actually, I was surprised I actually remembered his name correctly first time round. But I think there's just not really a proper backstory to him. There's no sort of real sort of understanding of his motivation, and he's just, in terms of a character, he's very one-dimensional. And I think, it's just in terms of what had come before, in terms of sort of the main sort of villain being Loki in the first one, and then in this one where you've got I guess it's sort of the villains this time around is Cate Blanchett. In certain ways, you've got sort of the Grand Master as well. He just doesn't really compare to the rest of them. What about yourself?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Thor 2. I rewatched it the other day and I found it to be quite a slog to get through. When it's kind of focused on Thor, Loki and his band of merry men going on adventures, it feels like it's got a really good momentum. But when it kind of cuts to sort of the elf storyline, or especially when it cuts to the Jane Foster plot line, it just immediately just grinds to a halt. And it just feels like they've got these 3 kind of plots that are just, none of them are that exciting. And it feels like at the beginning when you see Thor kind of roaming around the galaxy, putting things to right in the third, all these realms, I thought that was quite an exciting movie. But then when it's got Thor moping around, it's like, no, this just didn't do it for me at all. But kind of the reason I was curious to ask is that I think for a lot of people going into Thor 3, there was maybe quite a lot of trepidation, or I suppose the idea of a third Thor movie didn't have many people excited based on their response to Thor 2. Some people perhaps aren't fans of the first Thor. I actually think quite the opposite of it. But I'm curious to know what you thought going into the third Thor, solely based on something like Taika Waititi and the addition of like people like Cate Blanchett and that going in, before even we got that first trailer that seemed to blow everyone away. What was your kind of hopes and expectations for this third Thor movie with that kind of talent involved?
I agree. I mean, certainly based on Thor: The Dark World, I don't think the world was screaming out for a third one. I mean, Joss Whedon certainly used him well in the first Avengers film, maybe not as well in the second one, although he does get that wonderful moment when they're sort of playing Pick Up the Hammer at the party, and when his face when Chris Evans manages to wobble it ever so slightly is classic. But I think the film was just so sort of dull that it was like, well, do we really need to see anything? Especially, I think it's definitely the worst sequel to any of the main films, because Captain America, the films have just got increasingly better. Iron Man sort of went up, then down, then up again with Iron Man 3. But I've been a fan of Taika Waititi. I thought What We Did in the Shadows was absolutely fantastic and absolutely hilarious, and I really sort of loved the sort of central relationship at the heart of Hunt for the Wilder People. So I was excited to see what Taika Waititi would do, especially along seeing what Shane Black had managed to do. And yes, that was exciting. And the seeing Cate Blanchett as a Marvel villain was something that I was very, very excited to see. I think the story was interesting. But the cast itself was having Jeff Goldblum along was and just basically peak Goldblum for me was a joy to behold when the first trailer came out, and also seeing that, because I was a fan of the original Thor, and what I liked about it was the sort of Shakespearean style to it, because a lot of people said that it could have begun very Flash Gordon-y and not worked, which is potentially why my first choice for Odin Brian Blessed was not offered the role and it went to Anthony Hopkins instead. But the tone of this one, especially with the score, the sort of 80s electronic synth score, was very sort of Flash Gordon. And the first thing that came through about the trailer was, well, apart from the Led Zeppelin song, was definitely the humour, which is what Joss Whedon had managed to do with Thor in the Avengers movie, but seemed to be completely lacking in the sequel. And I think that was a sort of secret weapon that Chris Hemsworth had in his back pocket, and he really got to use it in this one, I thought.
Yeah, I share everything there. That I'm a huge Taika Waititi fan, and I'm sure everyone could go through all the back catalogue of Filibuster, and as soon as he was announced, it was like, mark my words, this will be and I think I said the best Marvel movie, but top tier is close enough, that this would be like a top tier Marvel movie. That he was just one of those directors that you trusted to bring forward a vision, that he's not someone you hire to put something out. Like when you maybe look at some of the other directors for kind of some of the Marvel movies, you think, well, that's someone that's really competent, will put something out, bring it all together, get it in on time, under budget. People don't hire Taika Waititi for that. They hire him to bring his brand of humor, style. And I thought, I was the same as you. The Thor I saw in the first Avengers, I found him, that was almost the best that I saw him. And I thought, this guy has got a natural charm, a comedic style to him. I'd love to see that really expanded upon. And this idea that the Marvel movies are always full of jokes, I don't know if I kind of subscribe to that. That when I've been doing my rewatch, there are humorous moments, but they're not out and out comedies, and there's a lot of moment of gravity, and it didn't really ever strike me as that. But with this, I thought they're going to do a really fun and enjoyable Thor movie. And kind of going into that, especially when I saw the trailer, the cast, I was like, this is so pitch perfect. This is exactly what I hoped for. And I feel sometimes with kind of Marvel, and probably it's maybe kind of genre fans and kind of in general with things like comic books and Star Trek, things like that, I think they sometimes struggle to imagine films out with like a bunch of like maybe 3 or 4 directors, so that when you get like someone like Taika Waititi, people that are kind of have watched his movies like What We Do in the Shadows, Hunt for the Wilder People, which you kind of need to like go out there and find. You can't sort of just, no one really ever gets to see them in the cinema because they're been and gone in a week. So he's one of these sort of word of mouth directors, and I think when someone like that gets announced, people like us, for example, are out there championing him, thinking like, trust me on this guy is going to really impress you, because he is that unknown element. And I think when the film came out, all these Blu-ray special features, his Twitter presence, I think kind of Marvel fans have really got to know the joy of Taika Waititi over the past few years, and I think that hype by HUD and belief in him was fully rewarded.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, yeah, there was probably a lot of people thinking that it was maybe a bit of a risk hiring someone with such a sort of certain comedic and sort of visual style, based on the sort of the Edgar Wright part of Ant-Man, but also having only done the small independent, maybe sort of 2-3 small independent films before, and then moving up to such a big budget summer blockbuster, because I know there's been issues with other filmmakers and other large franchises who have not fared so well when it comes to playing ball and towing the company line, so to speak. But it seems that Kevin Feige had enough faith in him to just basically let him loose and deliver the film that he wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think we've seen probably more of that in sort of the past few years with Marvel movies. The Edgar Wright is still one of the big regrets, I think, of Marvel movies. But I think now when we watch these movies, we see a lot more of the director's input and design and style on the screen than perhaps we saw in those early years when there was all that pressure to make movies that conform to a certain way and standard. And I think that I'm excited for almost when they're announcing these sort of phase 4 movies, when there's so many unknown elements at this point about what movies those are going to be. I'm kind of excited to see the directors that they're going to get involved, because I think people like Taika Waititi, Shane Black, these people will look at these movies, you know, the Black Panther director's just blanked from my mind, James Gunn, they're going to look at these movies and think, I could go in there and I could make a Marvel movie that I want to make. And they're likely to do that, whereas before maybe some would be put off thinking they're just going to be director for hire, point, click, you know, the rest is done in CGI post. I think it's going to be really interesting to see where they go on that front next.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they're going to be able to get some really good, I think some well-established names, but also they're doing a great job of spotting sort of upcoming talent, both in terms of actors, but also in terms of directors as well. And the future is bright at the moment for Marvel. I mean, yeah, they've got the golden ticket. They can basically do whatever they want. They could, you know, announce any type of film they wanted to do. People go, oh yeah, okay, no, absolutely, I'm on that. I mean, we trust you so far. So I think, the future is definitely bright. But what I thought was great is that, yeah, Taika managed to basically almost reinvent the character of Thor. I mean, people were sort of saying that, oh, this Hemsworth, he's actually really funny. I never knew that. But clearly those people were the same people who boycotted Ghostbusters because it was a female-led reboot, because he's absolutely hilarious in that and steals every single scene. I mean, His comic timing is absolutely superb, and he just knows how to sort of deliver a line to perfection for me.
Yeah, I think all of them really in this, like Tom Hiddleston, Jeff Goldblum, I think like Taika Waititi himself as the lovable Korg. I think the whole cast in this just gets comic timing so well. Carl Urban, Kate Blanchett, you just go through the whole list, and it's just really impressive that every one of them just clicks perfectly with this kind of comedy. And I think that's probably that, I suppose, in a way, when you think of something like the first one, which I agree with you, I think it's a really underrated and really good Marvel movie, is like, it is that very Shakespearean, it's larger than life, and I think Kenneth Branagh did a fantastic job bringing that to life. But I always think with Shakespearean actors, so many of them are so good at comedy as well. Something like Patrick Stewart, for example, that Shakespearean actors and that style lends itself very well to comedy. It's that larger than life, it's sort of that puffed up, like you can I can imagine being in sort of this surrounding, wearing these costumes. You can either be sort of Shakespearean, maybe try and make it a Game of Thrones, which they did in the second one, or you just go sort of embrace the campness of this whole sort of ridiculous, larger than life, hammers and huge costumes and grand sets. I think like they've showcased all three possible ways they could have done it in the Thor trilogy over the three films.
Yeah, no, all you have to do is basically, this is the beauty of the sort of the rewatch that many people are doing, is if you compare like Anthony Hopkins' work in the first one to now, he's very sort of subdued and sort of gentle in this one, but in the first one, he's shouting, "But you're not king, not yet," and stuff. He's shouting and spitting and delivering all these lines. And then sort of Loki shouting, "Tell me." It's really. These are basically two people who are playing a Shakespearean play. It just happens to be that they're wearing giant horned helmets and stuff like that. So it's definitely Thor has evolved along the way, not just the character but also the movies that they're making. And I think it was James Dyer of Empire Magazine basically said that this is Marvel's first comedy, and I would agree with him on that. Ant-Man is a very, very funny film, but it's still not an out and out comedy. This is probably a comedy first, and then sort of action, sort of adventure second. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. I think like it's immediately made clear in those first 5 or so minutes where you just have him like creaking around in those chains, and you're like, right, that sets the tone perfectly. Like that's what you're going to get. And I think like if there's people make this accusation against Marvel, and maybe sometimes they're right, but like any sort of tension is undercut with a joke. Like with this and stuff, like I never feel like tense watching this movie. Like, oh, I don't know if will Thor survive this. Like I think they just make like, here's a drama where it's like this family issues again, but they just like go out and make it really funny. Like they don't sort of undercut any tension because they choose not to go down that route. They just choose to go, right, here's a story, but we're going to make it really funny.
Yeah, no, I think I did read some criticism of it. I think one bit in particular, I think is, well, since this is a spoiler podcast, it's okay to talk about, but right at the end when Korg sort of talking about, oh yeah, no, don't worry, your foundations are strong, we'll be able to rebuild. Oh no, the foundations are gone. Yeah, no, the plan's broken. Yeah, so it's like people sort of undercutting the sort of emotional moments with a joke, but that's what some people do, when, during really difficult times, sometimes humour can help and stuff like that. And I thought overall the humour was pitched perfectly. And yeah, I'm a total fan of Korg. I thought he was an absolute delight, and I did want him to be to see more of him potentially in Avengers and whatever. But of course, I do realise that he is on the same ship as everyone else that has now just been met by Thanos at the end of this one. So I'm not sure if we will see him again, but fingers crossed.
I bet in like that bingo people have where it's like which Avengers characters are going to die after all these years, like I bet not many people will have Korg as one of the first deaths or whatever in the Infinity War movie coming up.
Yeah, I know. I'm extremely worried for everyone on that ship. Basically, we know that Thor meets the Guardians of the Galaxy later on, but basically everyone else on that ship, it's who knows at the moment. You've got Heimdall on it as well, so there's always that persisting rumor that Heimdall's orange eyes are the same color as a soul stone, and he can see, all across the universe. So I don't know. Is that going to be explored?
I never thought about that. Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? And Idris Elba obviously doesn't appear in any of the footage or trailers as well. He's got the Hawkeye issue there as well. So
justice for Hawkeye.
Jesus, everyone's going to die in this movie in the first few minutes.
I know. Yeah. Well, as I said before, I think in another one of the podcasts, I think for Thanos to be established as a truly credible threat, someone very popular needs to die very early on. But who that person will be, I guess we'll find out. But one of the things I did like about the Thor Ragnarok is how they sort of gently retcon certain moments. When Hela is walking through the trophy room and just sort of knocks over the existing Infinity Gauntlet and just goes fake, because people have been like, but how is that one there when he's got the one at the end of Age of Ultron? So it was a nicer way to get around a potential issue that they hadn't properly thought about when they started out sort of 6-7 years ago. So
yeah. There's one thing you touched on it earlier on, and it's one thing I particularly like about this movie, and I think it's another thing that sort of shows the evolving Marvel, is that I really like the score from Mark Mothersbaugh. He's noted for his work on things like the Lego Movie. He did a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson's early movies before he discovered the joy of Johnny Greenwood. So I was really, really excited that he was attached to score this. Like his work on things like the Royal... What am I saying? Paul Thomas Anderson, Wes Anderson. That his work on things like the Royal Tenenbaums, for example, The Life Aquatic. I really think that they were such a good pairing when they worked together on those early movies. So I was really excited with him, and I think like he nails that sort of Flash Gordon, like larger than life score. And I think with like the Avengers movies, kind of overall Marvel movies, have been kind of fairly criticised at points for having forgettable scores, that I can barely remember the score for half of the movies. I think the Captain America movies have a good one. I think Avengers 1 has a good one. Guardians of the Galaxy, take away that it's got an original score, it has a memorable kind of choice of soundtrack. But I think it was really good to see that Marvel movies can do these good scores as well, and I thought Mark Mothersbaugh had delivered a good one here.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great one that sort of brought to mind sort of the sort of great classic sort of space adventures of the 80s as well. I would throw in the score for Ant-Man. I've always enjoyed the score for Ant-Man, actually. I thought it was a really good one. But I like the just that sort of bit when the title credit comes up after the sort of opening segment, just with the synth and stuff. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm on board with what they're going to go for. Just that sort of small piece of music sort of led you into sort of, you kind of know exactly what type of movie it's going to be. So it was very effective in doing the job.
And it certainly made like staying at the end credits really good when you've got like a memorable score as well to soundtrack you're sitting in a seat on a Wednesday night. Because it's like, real Marvel fans don't leave before the end credits, so it's always nice to get something good to listen to while you're sitting there for 8 minutes waiting for... Absolutely. So have you got any kind of final thoughts on Thor 3 before we dive into sort of our last movie of this entire series today?
Well, I just wanted to sort of bring up the fact that the Thor movies, for all the sort of fighting stuff, they're always sort of rooted in sort of a deep family squabble. And I was thinking about it, the first time I saw it, I thought of it, and even more so in the second time round. The plot is essentially two brothers have to deal with a psychopathic sister who they did not really previously know about in order to battle for the throne. And did you see the final series of Sherlock?
Yes, I did.
The last episode where they discover that they actually have a sister. It basically felt like the exact plot of that, but in a good way. And it just brought to mind that. But I thought Cate Blanchett was great, and I would like to see her again. I mean, you don't see a body at the end when she's defeated in the final battle, so there's potential to come back. And I know in the comics, Thanos courts death in the form of the goddess of death, Hela. So perhaps maybe he's doing all this to impress Cate Blanchett. But I mean, who wouldn't? But one thing we've not actually talked about yet is actually Mark Ruffalo in The Incredible Hulk, and the whole sort of Sakaar sequence with the wonderful, wonderful Jeff Goldblum as the Grand Master. So what were your thoughts on that bit?
Yeah, I thought I was so happy that Mark Ruffalo, like I think one of the things that kind of made me really excited that Thor and Hulk were going to be together in this movie was Hunt for the Wilder People and Boy to Taika Waititi's movies, because I think he does like double act pairings so well. So when it was like, oh, it's going to be this sort of buddy cop kind of style movie, I was like, that is so Taika Waititi. He's going to do such a good pairing with this, because I think like Hulk works so well with other people when he's on his sort of own or in sort of surrounded by dour people. I don't find him particularly exciting a character. So I think like Thor, like even Hulk in this is really quite funny as well. Like that scene where he's sort of petulant in his own apartment was like comedy gold. So yeah, I was really excited by that. And like then you throw Jeff Goldblum in the mix being Jeff Goldblum. It's like perfect.
Yeah, no, I mean I heard a rumor that Taika Waititi said maybe 80% of the film was improvised, and I'm pretty sure that basically just any scene that Jeff Goldblum was in was, it was like, what do you want me to say? Oh, just say something that Jeff Goldblum would say. So it's like, oh, okay, yeah. Oh. And I'm just glad that life found a way to get Jeff Goldblum into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Exactly, and he's still alive at the end if we stay for the post credits.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, there's hope that he will return in some form or another down the line. I hope there's a phase 4.
And I believe
movie
his
for him.
brother is the Collector. Am I correct in thinking that? Apparently, his brother's with Benicio del Toro, so there's potential, I guess, for a scene in Avengers: Infinity War if maybe they manage to get something. But yeah, no. Overall, yeah, no. Thor Ragnarok for me, having completed my Marvel rewatch, is definitely in the sort of top 5. So it's definitely top tier Marvel for me.
Absolutely, is in my top 1 as well. So let's dive in now to sort of Black Panther. It's still going strong in the cinema after all these months. You recently just rewatched it again. I'm going to go see it again before Infinity War on Wednesday night. So do you want to give people a wee sort of dive in and tell them sort of a bit of the plot of the movie, and then let me know kind of what your thoughts were going into this movie?
Okay, well, Black Panther it starts with a sort of a voiceover narration sort of discussing the history and origins of Wakanda, which is an African country which came about after a meteorite of vibranium crash landed into the ground, and they were able to sort of create loads of sort of technology, but they decided this technology was not suitable for the rest of the world, so they've actually hidden away and they're pretending to be a third world country in Africa. But the film basically picks up straight off from the events of Civil War, where T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman's character, has witnessed the death of his father and is returning home to become the rightful heir and king to Wakanda. And he discovers that there is a potential other claim to the throne in the form of Eric Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, who has links to a previous villain, Ulysses Klaue, played by Andy Serkis, and this will result in a deadly battle for the throne. Now, I know that this film is a huge deal. I believe it's the highest-grossing film in the US just now, one of the highest-grossing films in the world. I was never sort of too familiar with the character of Black Panther, but it's basically become a sort of cultural phenomenon, and I'm glad that it has. But for me, on the first viewing anyway, I appreciated the cultural significance for it, but for me, the film felt distinctly sort of mid-tier Marvel for myself. I thought in terms of some of the action, the CGI was not as good as it should have been, and I did have issues with the sort of final sort of third act of the film. But for me, I mean, I thought the first half of the film, where we're sort of introduced to the country of Wakanda, especially the characters such as Shuri, T'Challa's sort of kid sister, and then it's when it goes on to the Korean sequence in Busan, and it's basically like a Bond movie. I thought that bit was superb. It was just the sort of second half that sort of let it down for me. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I did a podcast on this a few months ago, and I felt the same as you. Like, I am so happy that it's really hit this like huge note. Like, I had a feeling it was going to prove really popular, and to see it kind of beat the numbers of things like Titanic is just, I think it's probably beyond what Marvel or anyone even expected, the most optimistic person. I'm curious to dive into this one again because I came out the same as you. I felt like it was sort of a mid-tier one. Like, I thought some of the performances were really quite interesting, but with this I just kind of came out and I was like, yeah, that was good, that was fine. There was nothing in it. Like, I think the fact that we'd sort of just come off Thor, and we now had this movie about another person that's about to become king, and he's not king yet, and then it sort of kind of falls apart a little bit. Like, in terms of like the performances, I found those really interesting and exciting, but in terms of the plot, I was maybe like, I'm a bit fatigued of this sort of thing at this moment in time, and it just sort of left me a bit like, yeah, good, I'm happy with that. Bring on Infinity War. So I think, yeah, I kind of share some of your feelings on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think I did read a tweet or something. Basically, someone was saying that Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther did have almost the same sort of plot, where Prince loses his father and then is trying to, regain the throne from a vicious relative. But for me, I thought that it was almost more akin to sort of the Lion King, in that basically, the sort of would-be king is basically basically discouraged from taking the throne by a manipulative relative, and then sort of goes on a bit of a journey of self-discovery with a couple of friends, and then comes back deciding to fight for the throne and become the true king. So even though I was slightly down on the film, I thought that Michael B. Jordan's Eric Killmonger was probably one of the top Marvel villains for me. I thought that his reasoning and everything as to why he is right was basically, he was sort of spot on almost. He believed what he was doing, and from a certain point of view, you can see why he would be doing it, and he's completely right in his actions. I think a lot of sort of compared the two of them, I guess it's sort of, they both kind of wanted the same thing, which was for Wakanda to basically become a true power and basically, use what it's got for, to enhance the world, but they were going to go about it in separate ways. So in some ways, a sort of very sort of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X sort of thing. And I guess, that parallel was also used for sort of Professor X and Magneto in the X-Men films. So in that way, it's very similar, that they're both sort of wanting the same sort of goal, but they're going about it sort of different ways. What did you think about that sort of aspect of it?
Yeah, like I felt like it was, pardon the pun here, but I think it was like a big pair of Infinity Stones from Disney with how they did that. Like, I was watching the movie and I was listening to Killmonger, and there was, I agreed with, where he was sort of coming from. I didn't really echo how he went about it, but you're sitting there thinking, Disney, one of the biggest family conglomerates in the world, and there they are saying, like, we've got this character on screen going, us as a black people should rise up with our weapons and take control from these oppressive white men, police, things like that. And you're thinking, wow, like, we're used to sort of maybe messages like this, and whether it's, people from minorities, women, and especially in the kind of age of Trump, like, these things are, in our television, they're in our movies. But I have to give credit to Disney for, like, going through with something like that. Like, I can imagine it would be much easier for them to go, right, Killmonger's motivation is something evil, but not quite explicitly stating on screen that we want an uprising, that we, and, like, the fact that he is so convincing, is so convincing, like, you think, wow, like, okay, fair enough, this is, like, really impressive. I'm still blown away that happened, and I say well done, Disney, for doing it.
And even like his claim to the throne is completely legitimate, and that's what makes it so interesting, is that the fact that he is actually in if events had been differently, then he would have been equally entitled to the throne. So that was fascinating. I mean, the fact that this film starts off with basically a flashback in sort of 1992 Oakland and stuff like this, it's not what you'd expect starting off with Marvel, a Marvel film like this. But I mean, they were sort of swinging to the fences, and they've hit a home run with it. And I thought that the two of them, part of the issue maybe for me with the film is that Chadwick Boseman's character is very sort of calm and assured and passive, and at times maybe looked to get sort of overthrown sort of on the screen by the sort of the swagger and the charisma of Michael B. Jordan. But I think they both managed to pull it off. That balance towards the end. In terms of like some of the other characters, like personally, I would have liked to have seen a bit more of Ulysses Klaue. I thought Andy Serkis was great in Age of Ultron and in this, and I just would have loved to have seen a bit more. I thought he was hilarious, and it was nice to see him having fun, with his face on screen and not being a CGI character and stuff like that. So he looked like he was having a blast, and I'd be really interested to hear Ulysses Klaue's mixtape at some point. I hope that's an extra on one of the Blu-rays or something like that.
I think, what I found a bit sort of frustrating was that Killmonger is just such an exciting villain, but he doesn't really sort of kind of rise to the plate until sort of kind of probably halfway through the movie. That we're so sort of focused on Klaue at the beginning that it sort of overshadows kind of Killmonger's rise and character, that it just feels like they maybe should have gone with one or the other. That I think Killmonger maybe should have had a bit more of a presence, perhaps been a bit more involved with Claw at the beginning, and you sort of dip out of Killmonger until he sort of takes out Claw. Like at the beginning, we've got this exciting scene with him in the National Museum in London. They have the fight, and then he sort of vanishes off for a little while, and it just feels like it loses a bit of the momentum that he has as a character. And then we sort of feel that we have to sort of start again with his whole plot and his connection to the Black Panther and Wakanda, and that kind of slightly frustrated me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a bit of bait and switch between the sort of two villains. I mean, it's certainly set up that Andy Serkis is going to be the main villain for this. And then sort of halfway through he's taken out, and the main villain actually comes to the forefront from that point, and you start to piece it all together as to who he actually is. In terms of like the character, the Tolkien white guys in the film of Martin Freeman and Andy Serkis, I almost thought that Everett Ross's character didn't need to be there in the end. I mean, it was basically the film was going fine, and he didn't need to be there. He was, I guess, a link to the wider Marvel universe, of which there are not that many references. It's quite a very self-contained film in terms of that, which is quite, bold again for Marvel, as this being the last film before you go into Infinity War. I thought it was quite a bold move, but I think it was that thing that people who watch the Black Panther trailer, you've got people who are going, wow, this is a hero for me up on the big screen, and then there's other people who are going, oh wow, it's the two guys from Lord of the Rings sitting next to each other. That's so cool.
Yeah, like I think it was an interesting that they brought him back, because obviously he had this sort of small role in Civil War, and I think I remember at the time when he was originally cast, people were like, I think he's going to be the British Prime Minister, which, well, we should be so lucky. But I thought I think Ross is like a fine enough character, but it's just sort of an odd addition to these sorts of this movie, and I like that he's this stranger to this world, and things are shown around and explained to him. But again, that's something they could have maybe done with sort of Killmonger, depending how he's sort of introduced. That perhaps if he takes like a kind of rise to power a bit earlier in the movie, then he's going to be sort of showing some of these things for the first time anyway. So there's potentially an opportunity there to sort of expand the role. Whereas I just sort of think the Ross stuff becomes somewhat forgettable, and it almost feels like he's been given this redemption arc that he kind of doesn't really need. He's not the greatest and most exciting character in the world, but he sort of just gets on with his job. He's a desk pusher for the CIA, and he kind of by the end he's a bit more of a kind of, maybe more of an ambassador sort of role, but he strikes me as the sort of character that might be dead by the end of Infinity War as well.
Yeah, no. I mean, he's sort of, when he first arrives in Wakanda on the back of a stretcher, it's basically sure he's like, oh great, another broken white boy for Mr. Fix, which was a reference to Bucky the White Soldier. But I think it's part of the confidence in Ryan Coogler, who directed and sort of co-wrote the film, is the storytelling. That if this was a traditional Marvel film, if this film had been made, say, towards the beginning, Everett Ross probably would have been the sort of the conduit character into Wakanda. It'd be sort of they would meet him early on, like one of the first the Korean scene would probably be at the beginning. He gets shot and then he get taken into Wakanda, and that's how we would discover Wakanda, through the eyes of a white guy. But instead they go and tell it this way, and I think it's all the better for it, to the point that he seems slightly extraneous. We don't really need him in the film, and I'm perfectly happy for the story to be told to the main characters as well. So
yeah, definitely. And I think like you see it in every sort of way. It's just this kind of representation of kind of black culture, and the fact that the movie essentially opens with this scene that probably feels to a lot of people like pulled from the pages of real life, where these black individuals are facing kind of gunfire in their apartments and things like that. It's just like, I think it you can tell it's been written by a black writer director for black actors, for a largely black audience. That's probably helped them get to the kind of money total that they have. That you can't hit that sort of total with just appealing to the usual white Marvel fans that we probably all imagine when we picture a Marvel geek, for example. Like it's become a movie that sort of, it's bridged over into many different ways. And I think like even things like, perhaps for example, like even like I can imagine in the beginning, if they were making this movie in the early phase, that they would have someone like Nick Fury in there, perhaps as like that kind of confidence, like, well, we better put Samuel L. Jackson in it, you know, a named actor. Whereas again, it continues to show this perhaps confidence in Marvel movies to go, right, here you go, Ryan Coogler, go make whatever you want, cast whoever you want. And like, he's casted the creme de la creme of black actors, and he's produced a movie that has spoken to those people so incredibly well. And while it may not have connected perhaps for us, you know, that's ultimately doesn't really matter, that's just our opinion. But for the people that it's perhaps truly mattered to, they've now got the sort of superheroes that they can look up to, these screenings which have been paid for by kind of local black communities, where it's like, we want people to come in and see a black actor representing on screen a superhero that could become their superhero. And I think that's been the true success in the story of this movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, the casting has been superb. I mean, it was great to see sort of Daniel Kaluuya in a role. For me, Letitia Wright as Shuri stole the show. I thought she was fantastic, and I think she's going to get some great scenes going into it. And Daniela Okoye from The Walking Dead, I thought she was brilliant as well. But I think, yeah, there was... I think it's the sort of storytelling wise. I mean, there were certain bits in the sort of the building of Wakanda that didn't sort of maybe sort of got glossed over. I don't know if it's just me, but there's the scene at the end with the war rhinos. Yeah, you know? Because they breed these war rhinos. There's a scene in the end where basically it's charging down someone, but then it halts when Okoye stands in front of it. So basically it seems like they've been trained to respect the royal guard, but that's never been brought up before. So instead it kind of played like, oh, why is that happening? And it kind of reminded me of a scene from Kingsman 2 where the exact same thing happened with robot dogs and Elton John. So I mean, I know that Ryan Coogler said that there's a deleted scene between Daniel Kaluuya's character and the Okoye character where it goes into their relationship, because they call each other my love at one point, but their relationship's never really sort of explored, where it potentially could have been in a longer cut of the film. So I'd have liked to have seen that, and just a little bit more of the world building. But I know that in terms of sort of heroes and characters that people can look up to, there's a huge amount in these. And I know people will say, oh, but technically Blade was the first black Marvel superhero, and that was 20 years ago, but that was an 18 rated film, and so this is something that the families can enjoy. And times have moved on. I mean, when they first started the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they wouldn't have been able to do a film like this as well and as confidently as they have done now. But it's great to see it now. And also the most interesting thing to come out of it in terms of the world building is that the Soul Stone, as far as we know, is not in Wakanda, and it's just a vibranium sort of a mine in there. So it looks like from the trailers and stuff like that basically the attack on Wakanda is coming there because they're housing Vision and the Mind Stone. Yeah,
I suppose that kind of takes on to you. So kind of, we're essentially, you know, you've just finished your rewatch. I am still behind on my rewatch. I have a lot of last minute cramming to do before I finish mine, and obviously I'll see Black Panther on Wednesday before I go see Into Infinity War. But now that you've kind of got to the end of your rewatch, what's your thoughts kind of looking back on all these movies that you've just watched? There's 18 odd movies, you know, over 10 years, and now Infinity War is just on the horizon. What's your kind of feeling now that you've got to the end of it?
Now that I've got to the end of it, I am possibly even more excited than I was. My wife is not a fan of the Marvel films, and she doesn't sort of know why I'm so excited. So I was trying to come up with an analogy the other week, and I came up with, now this is one that's probably more for British audiences than American audiences, but I was trying to explain that if you could imagine the music producers, Stock Aitken and Waterman, they were like huge in the 80s. They basically made hit after hit after hit. It's like, imagine, I mean, they had people like Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan and Rick Astley and stuff. It's like, imagine they release album after album, which is a hit and a hit and a hit. Occasionally they do duets between Kylie and Jason. Everyone loves those. They'll introduce new artists. And then after 10 years, they say, right, we're going to have a massive concert where every single act is going to perform. But at the end of that concert, several people will retire and you will never hear from them again. That is a concert that every single fan would want to see, and it's a must-see event. This is what Avengers Infinity War is for people. I mean, when the Marvel Cinematic Universe started, I mean, it started with Iron Man, and people didn't really know how that was going to go. It was a huge risk. And then suddenly at the end of the film, Samuel Jackson turns up as Nick Fury and says, oh, by the way, I'm here to talk about the Avengers Initiative. And they're like, what? They're actually going to go with it? And then people thought, oh, it's never going to work. And then Avengers comes out and goes, oh my gosh, it totally works. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. This is going to be so exciting. And they've been playing the long game for 10 years. People have come and tried to do the same, DC Universe, and they have not executed it as well. And I kind of feel a lot of nervousness and trepidation because there are some heavy, high expectations coming in next week for Infinity War, and I just hope that it can live up to what people have in their minds. How are you feeling about it?
I'm excited. I always think that I think there is a lot of hype for this movie, but I almost feel that, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, like, I suppose we were talking about the Infinity War event that we went to, and those people like queuing up for the movie that didn't even have tickets. But it almost seems people are like relatively calm about this. I don't know whether that's because of the sort of the ad campaign, for example, that we haven't been overburdened with trailers, and I think people are kind of going into this like, I don't know if maybe people are a bit tense because they know it could be like sort of the end. It's like maybe going along to a funeral, for example. So there's that kind of adds to perhaps people's feelings and vibes. But I think like I don't know about you, but when I go into things like Twitter and social media, I mean, obviously it's not it doesn't indicate what real life can be like sometimes, but it seems like everyone's doing a bit of a Marvel rewatch. You know, we're certainly not the only podcast or website out there that's doing a rewatch. You're even your own website, you're doing that as well. So like everyone's sort of, I feel everyone's working up and gearing towards something, and I would expect it to have an incredible opening weekend. Absolutely mind blowing is what I'm expecting. But I think like when I think of like the first Avengers, like I couldn't even imagine something even bigger than that for an Avengers story. I thought like, holy hell, they've really done well. It's got its flaws, but like this is probably the biggest that they'll ever do. Like this, all these characters coming together, and then you know, Age of Ultron was a bit of a misstep, and it was maybe more of the same with sort of an Avengers movie with a lot of the same sort of familiar faces. With this, it has this sort of like huge feeling that it's going to be so many characters. There's going to be so much happening, and it almost feels like there's not going to be a moment left behind that. We speculated that we think like Loki and that will be wiped within the first sort of 10 or so minutes. Like that is going to really kind of set the standard for that rest of that movie, and I'm so excited to see where it goes and how I'm going to feel come Thursday morning at 3 a.m.
I know, yeah. I'm going to sort of sing the praises a bit of Age of Ultron, which I think I'm not sure if you've got to that one yet on the rewatch, but I think it actually is improved when you see what has come in phase 3. I think it actually fits in a lot better in terms of building the story and stuff like that. So I think I've seen a few other people sort of reappraise that one, actually looking back on it now, given everything that's happened since. But I think it's going to be an amazing experience to be in like one of the midnight screenings with everyone just sort of on tenterhooks trying to seeing what happens. And I think there will probably be a few tears in several screenings as well, because I mean, I know there's been a few emotional moments, like in Age of Ultron, when, for me, it's like when Peggy Carter's revealed to have Alzheimer's. I thought that was a tug on the heartstrings, and, you know, the ending of Guardians of the Galaxy was completely unexpected. I did not expect to find myself welling up at the end of that, but I did. So I think there will be full-on buckets of tears shed by audience members towards the end of this, but I think I do trust in the Russos. I think they've shown with Civil War that they can handle sort of a dozen odd characters. They've now got probably about another 10 that they need to do, but I think they will find a way to give everyone a moment to shine and stuff like that. Although I think the running time has now been confirmed at 2.5 hours, so including end credits, I mean, that's actually slightly less than I thought there was going to be to fit in everything. But I have a really awful feeling that rather the worst thing is going to be not that this character dies or that character dies. I think the worst thing is it's going to end on a cliffhanger that we're
Oh,
going to have to
definitely.
wait 3 years to find out how it ends. Because I did read that confirmation that Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel are going to be set before Infinity War, so they won't have
Exactly.
A direct,
I
link
told
to
you
it.
this was my
Yep.
big theory, that it was going to be 2 prequels, then we go straight into Infinity War, because then, like, whatever happens in sort of Infinity War, if people are dead, like the entire Earth's been destroyed, for example, like, it will be, how do you do that with, like, oh, by the way, let's cut to Ant-Man and the Wasp while all the planet is, like, in bits and pieces. Like, it's got to be, like, 2 prequels. And, I mean, an Ant-Man and, the Wasp prequel, I mean, I say prequel, probably, like, 2 weeks or something before Infinity War kicks off or something like that. But I'm so confident, and I'm happy that I've been right about something for once.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think one thing I want to say actually is the UK distributors of Ant-Man and the Wasp, I don't care about the World Cup. I don't want to wait a month after the US to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is apparently what we're going to have to do, and I'm really annoyed about that.
Yeah, I'm so annoyed. Like, how are we? We're not going to be able to talk about this, like, for months. Like, we say, like, oh, how are we going to cope for, like, social media for a few days with Australia getting it, and then we'll kind of have, like, the press screenings. Like, we will literally have to wait for months and like a month for this movie. I'm hoping there'll be a press screening in Glasgow that I can go to, like, a couple of weeks early. I don't know. That's my only hope, and I'm definitely going to try and get you onto that list. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I might get a flight to America. It might be that bad. But I mean, if it is a prequel, then it's not as important, perhaps, because it won't directly tie in. But I mean, I've got this awful feeling that, what if the film ends on, like, Thanos doing this infamous finger snap in his Infinity Gauntlet where everything did, and it cuts to black, and everyone's like, what? I mean, yeah. Because I think I did read a rumor that, I don't know, have you heard if it's going to be confirmed if there's going to be any post-credit scenes at the end of Infinity War? Because if it ends on a cliffhanger, they can't really do any post-credit stuff, can they?
Yeah, like, there'll be something, but what it is, I don't really know. Like, it could be the comedy scene that they sometimes start doing.
Oh, it could just be a teaser for Ant-Man and the Wasp, or potentially Captain Marvel as well, maybe, because we haven't seen anything yet. Because I did find it interesting that they had one of those, 10 years of Marvel, thanks for joining us on this wild ride, and the last shot was Brie Larson being introduced as Captain Marvel, but it was a trailer video for Infinity War, and I was like, what does this mean? Oh, brain going into overdrive trying to work out. Because that's all we've got to do for the next couple of days is wildly speculate.
Exactly. So, well, I suppose next time kind of people will hear us on Monday, we will have seen the movie. We'll be talking about it, maybe a stone's throw away from some of the places they've shot. We're gonna go out have some fun. So I'm really excited to chat about it next week, having finally seen it at long last. So, kind of before we kind of wrap up, like I touched on it, that you've got this blog where you've kind of been reviewing all the Marvel movies. If people wanted to read them, kind of reach out to you on the internet, Dallas, where would people be able to find you?
Yeah, well, they can find me on Twitter at champcelluloid, and my blog is championshipcelluloid.blogspot.com, and I've been uploading a new review, well, a rewatch of each of the Marvel films every day, which will end with Black Panther going into the midnight screening on the Wednesday. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo. You certainly won't find spoilers on our Twitter feed before we probably have our chat next week. I'm sure there'll be some vague things of like, I really like this movie and that's about it, sort of thing. But I highly recommend checking out Dallas's blog. It's been a really good. Obviously, this is the first time we've got him onto this Prelude series, but if you want to find out his thoughts on all the movies, definitely check out his blog. So until Monday, that's it kind of from us. So I hope you all enjoy Infinity War, and we'll be there to talk with you on Monday about our thoughts. Goodbye.
Thanos demands our silence.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.